All right, so in this upcoming block, we have. Oh, I was going to say, did I not paste it? But I did paste it. All right, so in 1895, I'm laughing because I said this yesterday. I had to do it for a presentation, but this was part of the presentation. In 1895, Gustave Le Bon wrote a book called The Crowd, and it's about, well, how crowds work, right? Because mass media is addressing the crowd, not individuals. Crowds, they get riled up. They love anger and passion and a whole bunch of like general emotions. And it's not about intellectual cerebral thought. So it's not good to try to communicate logically to crowds. You have to kind of use their emotion and, to address that, right? So if you think back to Shakespeare and Mark Antony, Caesar has just been killed. Mark Antony comes up to address the crowd, and you think, like I thought when I was reading it as a kid, he's going to tell them logically, like boom, 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 these people killed Caesar, and he didn't. He said a whole bunch of stuff to get them all riled up, and he used a little sarcasm and like some veiled wit, and he got these people all riled up, and I was like, "Ooh, that's an important lesson, right?" Now, I don't find that useful in my day to day. Right? I want to interact individually with individual minds and have that type of one-to-one communication. I'm not looking to whip up a fervor, right? This is not like a religious experience. This is an educational experience. So Gustave Le Bon was really the first person to, in the Western world, kind of write these ideas down. He's like a Machiavelli of more modern times. His book was referenced by a whole bunch of tyrants, basically, who want to control the mass population. He influenced Bernays and Lippmann and other people that we know from the 20th century. So anyway, I wanted to include a video of that connotation, and I found one that is like, it's really good. This is composed so well in so many ways. It's the opposite of like a dry book report. And then we're going to take that idea of mass control and go to the January 6th, the worst terrorist attack in American history, or whatever they call it, right? Where they had 5,000 FBI agents working on that case. That is a lot of FBI guys and gals and thems to be working on a bunch of peaceful people who did not bring firearms to the event. 5,000 of them. So that, that needs to be examined a little bit. And actually, we'll just play a couple minutes of Timcast and we'll cut to Jimmy because I want to hear him make fun of the situation there. 5,000. Because, they had to hunt down those grandmothers who were like just there for the day. And, they go and snatch them up like 6 months later and like, you were at the Capitol. Like all that nonsense that went on. They needed 5,000 FBI agents paid with your tax dollars to go harass those mostly peaceful American citizens. Let's say it that way. There was a protest in D.C. like a year before, and it was like fires on, buildings. There was protests a couple years before. They were burning down police stations and stuff like that. There was one time they took over and made an autonomous zone called Chaz, right? None of that nonsense ever got prosecuted with 5,000 FBI agents. I mean, when you have a justice agency that's like phoning in the justice and just doing the political work, maybe it's time for Cash Patel. I don't know. We're going to have to see.
They were barricading doors at police stations in Portland trying to burn the place down. It's like, dude, like I saw it like in real time, dude.
Mostly peaceful,
my
fiery.
My town of Eugene got wrecked. Like the first night of the Floyd riots, like they went and smashed up the Verizon store, and like this whole block in the downtown area got tore up. I was like watching it on Facebook. I lived like a few blocks from where it was happening. I was like, damn, dude, like.
No.
Yeah, so it's like none of that though. No FBI agents there.
Right, and see that's the power of the crowd. It's completely irrational, right? You can't have a discussion with that crowd. They come to your house to burn it down, and you can't say, "Hey, let's relate to each other as human beings," right? George Floyd was passing counterfeit money, and then popped some fentanyl to hide from being caught from it. And then the other guy restrained him because he was acting out. And during that, he died, right? What part of that involves having to burn down everyone's houses? It has nothing to do with any of us. Really. I don't like that happened to the human being. I don't like that there's fentanyl. I don't like that he didn't have the skills to go earn a living where he's not plundering other people's production and passing around counterfeit money and, probably, not just in imbibing the drugs, maybe dealing them to other people. Right. So there's a character with a history and there's a whole situation. And then when everyone's like, that applies to us and we have to go burn down people's houses who had nothing to do with it. Like, that's the part where you lose me in the conversation. If you want to say he wasn't handing out counterfeit bills or he didn't, pop the fentanyl and all this other stuff that happened during, like, I just want to say, put all the evidence on the table and let's have a discussion. I don't have a predetermined conclusion. I'm just saying there's things that happened that no one wants to recognize happened, and then they get all emotionally reactive and they go destroy stuff that doesn't belong to them, that they can't replace or recreate themselves. They can't say they're sorry for it. They do things that can't be undone. That's part of the population crowd control. I bet they all watched some stuff or had some internet access to some stuff, got them all riled up, and they didn't understand that they were getting riled up from that stuff. Thus, we're going to learn about Gustav Le Bon, and we'll get a book report in and be just a little nerdy. And then we're going to apply it back to J6 and 5,000 people there for that crowd control that they couldn't control very well. Let's see how it goes. Play it. Colby, thank you.
There is a powerful book that tells you everything about controlling and influencing the masses. It is a manual for manipulating human behavior worldwide. It was the favorite book of this dark soul. And if you understand it, you can protect yourself from the Suki that try to take everything from you, just like they have done before. Here is what you need to know. Let me give you 7 central thoughts of this powerful book. At the end of this, I will reveal the name of it. Mass manipulation rule number 1. Crowds obey simple emotions, not logic. In crowds, it is emotion, not reason, that dominate. The collective mind is purely emotional. Crowds are controlled through fear, anger, and excitement. Rational arguments are ignored, while strong emotions spread rapidly. Mass manipulation rule number 2. Repetition creates belief. Affirmation, pure and simple, kept free of all reasoning and all proof, is one of the surest means of making an idea enter the mind of crowds. The key to manipulating crowds is to repeat a statement over and over, without explanation or evidence. Repetition hardwires it into the collective mind. Mass manipulation rule number 3. Visual symbols overpower words. Crowds, being only capable of thinking in images, are only to be impressed by images. Crowds react to strong visuals and symbols far more than complex ideas or arguments. What they see shapes what they believe. Mass manipulation rule number 4. Prestige paralyzes judgment. The special characteristic of prestige is to prevent us seeing things as they are and to entirely paralyze our judgment. When a person, institution, or idea is seen as prestigious, it silences doubt and critical thinking. Prestige blinds the crowd to reality. Mass manipulation rule number 5. Leaders mold the crowd's will. The crowd is led by the unconscious, but directed by a leader whose will has become its own. A leader doesn't argue or debate with a crowd. Instead, they embody the crowd's emotions, amplifying its desires and focusing its energy. And it doesn't matter if the leader has no experience or merit. Mass manipulation rule number 6. Crowds worship absolute certainty. Crowds are only to be influenced by ideas that are absolute, uncompromising, and simple. Masses don't like nuance. They like simple black and white ideas presented with a total conviction. Doubt and complexity weakens influence. And finally, of course, mass manipulation rule number 7. Illusions seduce crowds more than truth. Crowds have never thirsted after truth. They turn aside from evidence that is not to their taste, preferring to defy error, if error seduces them. Facts don't matter if they contradict the crowd's feeling. A convincing illusion will always win over uncomfortable truths. The book that reveals all of this is The Crowd, a study of the popular mind by Gustave Le Bon, written in 1895. This is powerful knowledge. But understand this, knowledge is more powerful if you read it, discuss it, and apply it in a circle of trusted, like-minded people. Grimm stands for free minds, classic values, and relentless cooperation. We need each other in grim times. Be honorable.
Yesterday, it was reported that the FBI was suing, or I should say several agents were suing Trump and the DOJ to prevent the turning over of information related to J6 cases. Well, I got bad news. You can file your suits, but CNN was reporting FBI turns over details of 5,000 employees who worked on J6 cases to Trump DOJ. Trump won. You know, they're trying to run these stories where they're claiming that Democrats are flooding the zone with activism, launching all of these lawsuits against Trump and his administration. But it appears what is happening is that Trump is winning. Trump's executive actions and the efforts that are being made are wildly successful. And the FBI is going to be reformed. There's going to be accountability. CNN is reporting now that even though agents are suing, Trump's got the info. The lawsuit's going to go to court, and the judge is going to say it's moot. The information has already been turned over. Perhaps they'll say you can't use it, but what does it matter? Trump and his team now know which agents were working on these cases. Now, here's the interesting thing. It is an overwhelming number of FBI agents who were working on J6 cases. I believe the number was about 13,000 FBI agents, and 5,000 were working on J6. Why not May 29th? Why not Antifa and the far left? Why were they going after, what was it, 1,500 people? No joke. 5,000 FBI agents were going after 1,500 J6ers. I got questions. Here's a story from CNN Politics. They say, FBI officials have complied with demands to provide the Justice Department with details of thousands of employees who worked on investigations related to the January 6 U.S. Capitol riot, according to people familiar with the situation. The demand has caused consternation among FBI employees who fear it is meant to amass a list of personnel for possible termination by the Trump admin. I'd imagine so, and why not? Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, in a Friday memo with the subject line terminations, had given FBI officials a noon deadline Tuesday to submit the details of thousands of agents and analysts. Bove previously ordered the firing of 8 senior FBI officials, including those who oversaw cyber, national security, and criminal investigations. More than 5,000 employee details were submitted, including employee ID numbers, job titles, and their role in the J6 investigations, sources said, but not their names. There have been more than 13,000. There are more than 13,000 agents and 38,000 total FBI employees. Meanwhile, officials dispatched by Elon Musk have been seen at FBI headquarters. Musk has headed up efforts by President Trump's newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, which is not a real thing, by the way. But several FBI employees on Tuesday sued the DOJ, accusing it of violating the Constitution and privacy laws by demanding that agents complete a survey allegedly designed to purge Bureau personnel. The agents want a federal judge to block the Trump admin from publishing or releasing the surveys or any information included in their answers. Quote, the very act of compiling lists of persons who worked on matters that upset Donald Trump is retaliatory in nature, intended to intimidate FBI agents and other personnel and to discourage them from reporting any future malfeasance and by Donald Trump and his agents. The lawsuit alleges the survey agents were required to fill out include questions about their positions at the Bureau and specific roles in J6 investigations, including whether they executed arrests, participated in grand jury investigations, or testified at trials, according to a copy of the survey included in the lawsuit. The lawsuit was brought by several anonymous FBI employees as a class action complaint. My friends, accountability cometh. These people were targeting protesters. Now, the interesting thing about January 6th, which I like to bring up, is that, well, first, none of it makes sense. Certainly, you had people fighting with cops. You had a conflict on one side of the building, and it's bad. And rioters should be held accountable. I obviously, you hit a cop, you go to jail. But why a nationwide manhunt? Why raid the home of a woman in Alaska because she may have looked like another woman at the Capitol? That was a big story. There was a woman who was in D.C., not at the Capitol. She looked like another woman who was at D.C. because, well, sometimes people look alike. They raided her home. When you look at everything that's going on, it only makes sense in the context that they expected members of Congress to be harmed in some way. But it didn't happen. Why? There was a police officer who ordered the evacuation without orders from his higher-ups. Now, he ended up getting in trouble for some reason or another, but according to some journalists who've worked on this, they believe the U.S. government, when this was happening, wanted it to escalate so they would have a justification for stopping Donald Trump. Now, think about it. You had all these court cases claiming Trump was an insurrectionist. This was their salvo to stop him from running again. Imagine if J6 happened and members of Congress actually got hurt or worse. Then they'd say, people died. People were maimed, whatever it may be. This is serious. And maybe then they would have succeeded in shutting down Donald Trump. The courts would say, look, there was violence, blah, blah, blah. Instead, the court said nothing happened. You had a riot. Some people got arrested. It was like 800 rioters and a total of 1,500 people, including another, 700 who were walking around the building, nonviolent misdemeanors. Why then have a nationwide manhunt? Well, maybe they weren't intending on anybody getting hurt, and they thought this play would work. But, my friends, it didn't. They say groups representing current and former agents reached out to congressional Republicans to urge the White House to abide by Patel's promise in the Senate last week that agents wouldn't face political retribution for working on cases they were assigned. So, as I mentioned earlier, I was watching The Daily Show, and they said, is this legal? Yeah. Donald Trump, apparently there was a memo sent out to the feds. And it said that Trump doesn't trust he can have these people do their jobs because they targeted Trump supporters. Did they go after Antifa? No. What about the May 29th insurrection where Trump was forced into an emergency bunker? No. Now, Trump was president at the time. I guess he wanted to win re-election, was scared of using a heavy hand. Now, not so much. But in 2020, thousands of far leftists firebombed the White House grounds. You all know it. Where was the nationwide manhunt for these people? Nowhere to be found. Nobody on January 6th firebombed the Capitol grounds. That didn't happen. So why are we here? Because the FBI is a political machine, and the people who work at the FBI either are complicit in or overtly partisan. And Trump says, I don't trust that you will do your job faithfully and uphold the Constitution because you've already proven you won't. Seriously, 5,000 agents were going after J6ers? I mean, most of these people, non-violent misdemeanors. So why? Yeah, it was politics. They wanted to prevent Donald Trump from winning, and they failed. Well, my friends, we got more. Before we get into it, make sure you check out the Green Room. I know I'm promoting a lot, but the Green Room number 73 with Terry Schilling and Mary Morgan, people are raving about it. They're saying it was really, really great, and you should definitely check it out. So, hey, look, man, when someone comes and for gutting the CIA, he's offering a
Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, New York, Atlantic City, Levittown, Cohoes, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for the link for the cheapest tickets. Holy S. The FBI just revealed that 5,000 out of their 13,000 agents were focused on January 6th protesters. That's 39% of the entire bureau.
Oh my God.
Were focused on hunting down and building cases against the January 6th protesters. That's not counting the amount of FBI people who were in the crowd that day. That's just, so remember when, so this is congressman and former law enforcement. This is how many, he says conservatively, FBI and FBI assets were in the crowd creating that riot you saw. 99% of the people at January 6th were nonviolent. And that's why they showed this picture of the people inside the Capitol were still walking respectfully in between the ropes.
Do you think some of the agents are disguised as statues in there?
Right?
Spray paint them like this.
So listen to what he says. How many? So 5,000. So almost 4 out of 10 FBI people were working on trying to get January 6 protesters. Almost half the agency was dedicated to that. A handful of people. And so watch what Clay Higgins says. How many were actually in the January 6th?
We're gradually, professionally rolling that evidence out.
You sort of answered the question right there in larger terms. You just said that elements within the federal government, I assume law enforcement, intel, and military, and I'm using your words, lured Americans to Washington into what you called a trap.
Yes, sir.
That guy said 200, at least, because conservative number, 200 FBI and FBI assets were in the crowd inciting people to do stuff, and they were inside the Capitol before the riot started, dressed as MAGA supporters. There were police, took off their uniforms, put on MAGA stuff inside the Capitol. So, now my big question is, here's my big question to you, Kurt.
Yeah.
So if the FBI is going to go through all this trouble, because all this is to try to discredit Trump's political movement. So they wanted to get Trump committing a crime of insurrection, which they couldn't. He was never charged with that because he didn't do that. But they tried. And that's why they did those other 4 cases that are completely bogus, made up. And in fact, Andrew Cuomo said it was garbage, the charges they brought against him in New York.
Of course, dude, Jimmy, not just that. You got all these people. These are the people that were willing to show up to protest. So now you got them all in one place and know where they are. You can put charges on them. They can never own guns again. It's like you're eliminating an entire chunk of movement. You know what I mean? In the plan,
that's right.
We're going to eliminate the whole movement in one swoop.
And so they tried to get rid of Trump, didn't work. But then they put almost half the FBI on trying to dismantle his political organ or a movement. So my question is, why would they go through that much trouble to dismantle his political movement only to allow him to get power again? Why would they do that? Now, some people say, oh, it's just the Yankees versus the Cowboys, two sides of the deep state, or the Rockefellers versus the tech bros. That's what some people say. I think that's a little too simplistic of an explanation. So which ones were running the FBI? And why would, and because obviously the ones who were against Trump, let's say Trump is a cowboy. So obviously the Yankees were running the
That's
FBI.
An old designation. I don't think Yankee and Cowboy is still how it is. Those lines have shifted quite a bit because a lot of Yankees and Cowboys are together. That's the whole New World Order.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So, but if you follow CIA or FBI or people that talk about being in it, they've been weeding, just like in Hollywood, just like your friends don't talk to you. Anybody that ain't going along with the thing got weeded out. They're not getting promoted. They're going to get driven out. Every industry anyone who was qualified. There's no good people in the FBI. I don't believe that. But if you were someone that believed in the thing, you got weeded out enough so that we could do what we want for a long time.
Well,
and that's why they don't want the books opening.
And we even reported on the questionnaire that they gave to FBI employees, asking them, do you know anybody here who's sympathetic to MAGA? Do you know anybody here who's sympathetic to January 6th? And then they would they'd weed those people out.
And you're already trained to trust the system because you're trying to be in the FBI.
That's
you never
right.
did drugs. That's like told us in school. Don't ever do any drugs because you can't work at the FBI or Secret Service. And so you're already a person that follows orders by nature, and you believe in it, though. You're not bad. And then you got to confront that. And like now, you're not going to get an A or your career, or you got to turn away.
So the people who were against Trump in the deep state were running the FBI, obviously, because they assigned half the FBI to go after him and his movement.
Let's say about 40% of them work for the deep state.
But the people who were running the FBI, so definitely all the people in charge. So then why would they then allow Trump to become president? Why wouldn't they, if they're willing to do that, if they're willing to lie, if they're willing to lie to the FISA court 17 times so they could get, if they're willing to do the dossier, which was, they knew was a lie. They lied about Papadopoulos. They lied about the FBI constantly. Russiagate was one big conspiracy theory invented by the FBI in the Clinton campaign. If they're willing to do all that, why would the FBI then all of a sudden go, oh, well, I guess he won the election? Why would they do that?
He's driving them out.
But why would they allow that to happen? Is my question, Kurt.
The guy missed. The guy that shot missed. The other guy missed.
So that's what a lot of people said. They said, well, they tried to get him. They gave him they got this patsy. Boy, was that guy ever a patsy. They got this guy who has no social media presence, all scrubbed. Nobody knows anything about him. They let him get on the 3 different Secret Service people saw the guy. They let him climb on top of the roof of the building that the Secret Service was in. They let him get on top. They let him get a clear shot. He got at least 3 shots off. And so you're saying so a lot of people are saying
COG is the one. The COG is the thing behind the whole thing. Continuity of government. That's the one.
The continuity of government.
And that's where, like, for example, they did the Ollie North stuff with the Iran-Contra smuggling. It's called the Doomsday Wire. It's like how you communicate if there's a nuclear war. And so I keep thinking about that thing because Scott Ritter said, because I asked him about it. He goes, yeah, they think there's some kind of bunker that they're going to go to, but it's not there anymore. Those haven't been paid for in years. But I think something happened behind the scenes because just like that DNC thing where I'm like, they all look like robots not getting instructions anymore. So I don't know what is different that I above my pay grade to know. But
so that's
such a
So I
there's
mean,
such a power structure where you like Kamala can't have a conversation for 3 hours. She can't. They have to curate it. So she won't say anything that she actually thinks ever. And to get promoted in that system for how long now, you had to be like that. So now whoever's given the orders to the people to do that, the orders aren't coming. I don't know why. And I don't know. It is 2 factions of deep state. Don't ever think it's not.
And this should outrage you as an American citizen to find this out. If you're not outraged that the FBI is not there to uphold democracy or law and order, they're there to actually go against the democracy. The people elected Donald Trump the first time, they tried to undercut him at every turn, lied to the FISA court, tapped his phone, did Russiagate. The generals in Syria lied to him about troop numbers. He was being lied to constantly, and he was being effed with by the FBI, and Chuck Schumer admitted that the CIA and the FBI doesn't work for the president.
That's right.
And so now we don't know who they work for. So this should outrage you. This should outrage you because if they can do this, because like I tried to explain to Cornel West, if they can do this to Donald Trump, someone who's super popular as a populist leader, they could do it to anybody. And they will do it to anybody.
They did it to Cornell.
And they did. I'm sure they did.
He didn't want to be president.
They'll do it to Bernie Sanders. They'll do it to Jill Stein. They'll do it to Cornel West. They'll do it to anybody who the establishment doesn't like. That's why this matters. That's why Russiagate always mattered. That's why it always mattered. Because that's what they'll do. So these are the real criminals. That's who the FBI should have been looking for. Those people. So here's the article. FBI provides the Trump Justice Department. And so this would not have come out if Donald Trump didn't become president. You wouldn't know how corrupt your FBI is. You would not know. If Kamala Harris won the presidency, this would never have come out. And by the way, it's not going to be reported the way it should be that, hey, your intelligence agencies are actually the criminals. They're actually the rogues. They're actually the people undermining democracy, not Donald Trump. They're not going to report it that way.
That they made COVID with your money?
That they made COVID with your money.
Yeah.
FBI provides the Trump Justice Department with details about 5,000 employees who worked January 6 cases. The FBI complied with the order from the President Trump's Justice Department. So who had that on your bingo card?
If the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing, expecting different results, this is perhaps one of the most insane things, if not the most insane thing I've ever seen.
Good evening, Democrats. Look up here.
This is the perfect example of the tribal nature here.
I have a show of hands. How many of you believe that racism and misogyny played a role in Vice President Harris's defeat?
Well, you don't want to be the one not showing your hand. You fall into groupthink. There's that group pressure.
That's good. You all passed.
Yes, you all passed the test. Do you believe what we want you to believe? Do you see what we want you to see?
We are sick and tired of the word white, working class being a code word for whiteness.
Thinking they can force through their reality, the story that they want to be true.
I am speaking, and I would love your attention. There is a black woman at this podium, and I deserve your attention.
To stop and say, listen to me, I'm talking. The audience does not lie. You can't blame the audience if you're failing to connect.
Like the 11 people who went before me. Yes, I am speaking.
They're not in tune with you. You're not in tune with yourself, with the words that you should be speaking.
One nation, under the divine, indivisible.
Under the
what?
It continues to fail.
We're at a time where black and brown people, women, and other minorities are being blamed for everything that's wrong with this country.
This kind of behavior is what is being blamed for what's wrong in this country. I think there might be some validity to that claim.
And we'll begin with the opening statements. Each candidate will have 30 seconds.
Good evening, everyone. It is my desire to be the next DNC chair. And I just want to give you all a little bit of something that's been on my heart here over the last couple of days. You fight on, you fight on, you fight on, you fight on. When your government is doing you wrong, you fight on, oh, you fight on.
I swear.
There's no way, bro.
Is that it?
Can I borrow something real quick?
My name is Artie Blanco, Freddie Blanco's daughter. Vote for me for vice chair.
Is that your platform?
What unites a corn farmer with a steel worker on the Iron Range with a new refugee in the Twin Cities? It's economics.
It's funny, at the end of the day, they're probably upset that it's the white guy that won. I don't agree with how he presents himself either, but he's not up here singing.
People are being harassed and bullied and pushed out of conversations and attacked. Of course, we're going to live our values because I agree with Governor O'Malley.
He's presenting as the least bad option out of a lot of bad options.
Rules specify that when we have a gender non-binary candidate or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 offices must be gender balanced.
Imagine watching your favorite sports team. The coach comes out and talks about how they're recruiting their new players, and they lay out these requirements and procedures.
In order to be gender balanced, we must elect one male, one female, and one person of any gender.
Women over here conducting their tryouts. We have to have a separate group of men conducting their tryouts. And then we have this third group of non-binary people conducting their tryouts. And we have to pull one from each one.
We have to elect one male, one female, and one person of any gender.
What will give you a better outcome? That or holding one general tryout where everyone is competing and then you pull from that single pool the 3 best players?
My name is Troy Blackwell. I know that I'm a new face to many of you.
Yeah, it makes it easier to come out and say, I'm the first of this category, whatever that category is.
Today I stand before you as one of the first non-binary candidates to run in the DNC's 177-year history.
That incentivizes an individual who would not otherwise stand a chance to get elected to stand a better chance of getting elected.
I'm proud to be the only Afro-Latino in this race.
So I'm going to do this and I automatically distinguish myself and get to make a speech.
I'm asking you to take a chance on someone like me, a proud non-binary Afro-Latino from the South Bronx.
It looks like even this crowd didn't buy into this because the end result, well, was this.
The final tally of votes, Troy Blackwell, 0. To ensure our process accounts for male, female, and non-binary candidates, we conferred with our RBC co-chair, our LGBT caucus co-chair, and others to ensure that the process is inclusive and meets the gender balance requirements in our rules. But I hope you will see that in practice, it is simple and transparent.
This is so overly complicated. I don't think anyone knows what's going on.
After a candidate is elected on the first ballot,
I would concur with Warren. I don't think they know what's going on. But that is the perfect preface for the story that starts our next block. But we have a lot to do before we can get to that. The tip of continuity of government was brought up by Kurt during that segment. And continuity of government is also the drill that the Black Hawk helicopter from 2 weeks ago was involved in. And continuity of the government also ties to the E-4B doomsday plane that was flying during the Black Hawk incident, but it also ties into war games going on the morning of 9/11. Operation Global Guardian was using E-4B Night Watch airplanes, continuity of government, and they were tracked to Offutt Air Force Base, where Bush later went on 9/11. And, one of the participants, a CEO from World Trade Center 2, was at Warren Buffett's last annual golf tournament, which was right near Offutt Air Force Base, because that's where Warren Buffett lives out there. So you've got like this cabal of deep state people along with the military industrial complex on 9/11 conducting continuity of government. Oh, see, I got to restart my camera. All right, let's just do it live. Let's do it live. Let's turn it off. Let's turn it back on. Let's plug it in. Let's do it. Cover me, Scott.
Yeah.
The USB.
Doing
it live. This isn't Fox News.
Yeah, exactly, guys. So we're gonna get a little history here, but just like, it's just so obvious on its face right there, though. Such a good example of how they rely so heavily on their credentials being a proud Afro-Latino non-binary. It's like, that is your credentials. You don't have, he didn't say, hey, I've been doing this type of activism work, I have these things. It's like, no, I am an Afro-Latino non-binary, and you must bow before me and vote for me. And even the Democrat Party, are getting to the point where they're like, you know what? 0 votes. Sorry.
Should you be proud over facets or characteristics that you had no control over? How is that something that you've accomplished?
Yeah, it's not an accomplishment. It's okay to it's okay to have pride of your heritage and your background and all that stuff, but it's like
everyone should be proud.
In fact, I'll get to that in a minute. I have a funny anecdote about that, but it ties to the yay thing. But anyway, but at the same time, it's like, those are no longer credentials, people. Sorry.
That's right. Those credentials are expired. 9/11, the mystery plane. This is the E-4B continuity of government. They fly out of Air Force Base at Offutt, Nebraska. There's a couple maps in here, if I recall properly. Yeah, you got some maps. When you follow first off, this is our jet fighter response on the morning of 9/11. Question: how did the terrorists with the box cutters get our fighters to fly out to the ocean and then fly up here to Maryland and then duck down here, right? That seems almost like there'd be some sort of inside job to misdirect our fighters away from their little operation. They do have E-4B Night Watch plane Look, it not only goes, it darts off toward Offutt Air Force Base from D.C., but it shadows Flight 77 coming into the Pentagon, allegedly. Here's Rumsfeld on the E-4B. Now, on the morning of 9/11, it was Brent Scowcroft, who works for H.W. Bush, that was on the E-4B. But there is a map in here of, because it flies over, there's a dead zone right here. Check this out. Okay. You see this break in the line right here? This is Sugar Grove. It's an NSA listening station. It's a radio dead zone. Okay. First off, you're not supposed to fly over that area. Secondly, this E-4B flew this pattern on the morning of 9/11, and then once the job was done, heading toward Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, and that gap right there says these are feds. Civilians can't fly over this thing, okay? I'm pretty sure they're routed around it. So for this to go on, and for 3 of these Night Watch doomsday planes being in the air on the morning of 9/11, and, you know, having the data from their flight tracks and whatnot, these are serious questions that aren't done by guys with box cutters, okay? The box cutter story was told to you as the feel-good hero story, et cetera, et cetera. The truth is still going on. The truth is still going on. The people who did it never got caught. And what I heard Jimmy saying right there is like, you know, imagine, you know, the intelligence agencies don't, like, yeah, dude, what happens when you figure out they're the ones who did the thing? You can't go tell anybody because they're in control of all the things. Right now is like the brightest spot in history for the past 20 years for people like myself who experience things, but you can't go tell the people who did it because they're just going to whack you, right? So, I don't know. Truth's coming out.
Hey, that's a new artifact. I'm not aware of that one. I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, Gaffney also wrote another book called Black 9/11. And
I have that one. Okay, that's what I thought. I have that.
AIG's in there, and he's also keen on the Zionist tip. He understands what's going on there, and he's done some good research there. So, Mark Gaffney, check him out. Trine Day Books also. This is a Chris Milligan book from Trine Day.
I was going to say Black 9/11's Trine Day and all that. So yeah.
Yeah, and he, you know, I think Trine Day published Whitney's books, and you know, a lot of the books I have, Chris Milligan published. So I owe him a call now that we're talking about that. That's my office to-dos for the week, though. All right, so Operation Global Guardian used these planes. It was a drill that confused NEADS, the Northeast Air Defense System, because there were so many simultaneous drills and drills with hijackings and drills with continuity of government. These things are not accidental to be ongoing, and there's several of them. See how many of these there are? There's a lot of these. These are all coincidental and help the hijackers do their thing. So, you know, when you're looking into it, you have to weigh this. How did the hijackers get our intelligence agencies to schedule all these simulated hijackings at the same time that they were going to do their hijacking? And how'd they get these Boeing E-4 doomsday planes flying around the White House? And in fact, there are 3, because the other 2 are tracked when there's one over the White House that has yet to be identified. I would still like to know who was in that plane and what was up. Also, keep in mind, the president didn't sleep at the White House that night. He was in Florida to read that book upside down in the photo op, by the way, right? His dad spent the night in the White House. Who's his dad? He's a former president, skull and bones, narco-terrorist, H.W. Bush, who did Iran-Contra and a bunch of other stuff that created the continuity of government plans so they can get away with it if they get caught. So there are all these machinations in the background that guys with box cutters had nothing to do with. So we need to learn about that history as well. And we need to be aware when we see it popping up, not only with what Kurt was just mentioning, but like in the case of the Black Hawk, what part of the continuity of government drill has you fly above the hard deck into aircraft, right? There was also a train fire this week. This was like a passenger change with 350 people that caught fire. So there's been a lot of like travel, TSA, what's Pete Buttigieg, what did he do? Transportation sector has had a lot of crashes in the past week, but maybe that's just because we're looking at it, right? Maybe they always have crashes, and you know, there was a plane in the West Coast, 2 planes crashed into each other on the tarmac. Maybe this happens all the time. We're just sensitive to it. So we'll take a longer sample and we'll look at the waveform on that and see if it looks as egregious.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures. They're hosting videos. They're maybe even doing Q&As. And these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.